Today's episode is presented by Veyer. Veyer was founded with the goal of building an affordable, everyday wristwatch that blends tasteful design with extreme durability and functionality. Veyer returns a sense of dignity to affordable wristwatches and are built to last. Veyer is a true American watch company specializing in both quartz and automatic watches. Veyer is offering our listeners 15% off if you use the code PODGO15. Go to VeyerWatches.com to learn more and get your new timepiece today. Hi, So-Called Oreos. Welcome to another episode. Today's special because we are joined with Calvin Williams, the founder and CEO of Freeman Capital. We were actually able to just connect with the company through Instagram, which is I feel like that's how a lot of people are doing their connecting nowadays. But it's just Janae and I today, and we're just going to talk today about generational wealth and how we can, how the Black community can develop that and send it on to other generations. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate you sitting with us.
No, thank you so much for inviting us, and thank you for your platform and kind of the space that you guys are carving out. I think it's so critical, so I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you so much. Just to jump right in, tell us about you, your background, where you went to school, and how you got started in finance.
Definitely. So I'm from Maryland, grew up in the Laurel, Columbia area. And I was always around technology. So my dad, he got one of the first Apples in 87 or 88 or something. And so I was playing with it then. And I began to write code, back when the websites were Netscape was a big deal. That's throwback days, used to code. It was a terrible WYSIWYG editor. It took 3 minutes for it to switch from viewer to WYSIWYG. And I used to edit things, and then I began to invest in the stock market just as a teenager. We always talked about money as a family. It was kind of a very normal thing, very, very transparent. And so it just kind of set me down this mindset of being very familiar with finances. And then when I went to North Carolina A&T, there I started my first company, and I thought I was killing it. I bought my first house at 20 when I was still in college. Couldn't tell me nothing until I went and tried to talk to a wealth manager, and he told me straight up that I was broke in his eyes. Right, so so I found out that there are levels to wealth, and in his eyes, or in the whole industry's name, if you can't deposit huge sums of funds, $250,000, minimum $500K, $1 million, you're not worth their time, right? And so, even though I had done all of these things, that is what really set me down this path of building a platform to help us all get generational wealth in our own personalized way.
Mm-hmm. And you said that conversations around money were kind of a normal thing in your family. Did your parents make it a point to talk to you about money? Because I feel like that's just, at least in American culture, I feel like that's kind of a taboo conversation that you don't necessarily have with your parents.
Yeah, and so it's actually interesting that I've gone back and asked them, why did they feel so comfortable doing it? And they said that they were trying to do it on purpose to expose me to the concept of money. And so, I can remember being 12 or 13, I got a loan from my dad, and I had to write a loan agreement and sign it it was official, the whole thing. So I think that they have always tried to make finance a common thing. You talk about groceries, you talk about your TV shows, we talk about money, and that's how you take the taboo out of it. I mean, when you talk about generational wealth, and especially what has plagued our community, it has been a lack of access to the education, a lack of access to the insights and expertise. And I'm thankful that my family made that very, very common for us to talk about.
Right. Now, this next question might seem very obvious, but why do you think Black people need to establish generational wealth?
So I want to answer that from a couple of angles, right? Because a lot of the time, because I'm deep in this space, a lot of the reporting is very, very negative, right? It's because it's always on like what's not happening. We need to take a historical view and realize that even before we came to America, we have been a generational wealth type of community, right? So you have what happened in Africa with the Musa, you have when we came here to the United States, even during slavery, we were doing the best that we could during, after slavery, there were numerous millionaires and people who were making progress. You had before integration, you have, multiple Black Wall Streets all around this country, and so we as a community have always been generational mindset. The problem is a systemic oppression that's literally taking it from us. And so the opportunity that we face now is much like with Barack Obama. This is an opportunity for us to take a major step forward that wasn't feasible in previous years. Now people are waking up to the fact like, oh, shoot, like there is systemic racism and prejudice in all of these systems. And so now with these doors opening up, it's time for us to not just repeat what our forefathers and foremothers did, but like have it ingrained as a part of our culture. Just like with Jewish cultures, it's very much a part of their culture, money and finance. Now it's time for us to kind of break through this door and make it a normal thing, because the reality is the United States is becoming a majority minority country, which basically means that Black and brown people are going to be the majority of the U.S. population. And this country is driven by consumer spending. You can't have half of the U.S. population not spending money because they don't have wealth. Right. So we have to build wealth for ourselves, for our communities, and for this nation.
Right. And earlier you had mentioned that you bought your first home at 20.
Yes.
Which I think is like crazy because I don't even think I thought about home ownership in general until like 5 months ago. But yeah, so like in America, that's one of the many ways in which you build wealth. And I've been like recently just, researching redlining, just like the history of that and how it makes it exceptionally hard for you even to gain access to that avenue of wealth, because a lot of us have hard times even, getting loans or being able to buy homes. And so like, how important is the act of being able to get your hands on home ownership, and how does that, translate into creating generational wealth?
Yeah. So I think that the most important part is figuring out how to navigate through the system to get what you want. It could be home ownership. It could be the federal, PPP loans. Like the thing is that in finance, they have often used complex terms to talk about basic things, right? To make it more complicated than what it is. So when I first bought my house at 20, I realized like, oh, okay, they need to see proof of employment, W-2, pay stubs, and a credit score, right? That's basically what they wanted. Thank God for my parents. They took some steps to put me on their credit when I was a teenager, so that when I was like 18, I had like a 760 credit score coming like right out, because you basically inherit the credit score when you're on someone else's, right? And then I had an internship, which with that internship, they were paying me a full-time salary while you're on intern.
We love to see you paying internship.
That's another thing which I hope those come back. But at that time, it was, okay, what are they going to look for to help me buy a house? And so at that time, it was, proof of income. You can still qualify for a loan when you have a new job. And so I knew that. And so it's about navigating these systems, getting access to the information so that you can get what you want. And home ownership has been great. I mean, there are, of course, positives and negatives, but like for us, as y'all know well, but the cost of college is ridiculous. And our plan, or one of them, is to take this old house that I bought over 15 years ago now, and, we'll just sell that for paying for my son's college. And so when you get these assets, they give you the flexibility to move in the way that you want to move to. And that is the most important part of building out a plan and strategy for generational wealth.
Mm-hmm. Now, before you mentioned, needing to have a credit score of a certain amount in order to buy a house being just one of the things that really hurts many Black people with doing these small things to help us acquire wealth. What are some of those other kind of hurdles that you see people struggle with when they're trying to acquire wealth?
So I would say that one of the biggest hurdles, which is really, really big, but it's not often talked about, is there is a lot of general advice that people apply to specific situations. So a customer that I just spoke to today, he was like, hey, pay off your credit cards, get them right? So he wants to buy a house. He has paid off his credit card. He was checking with us before he closed it, because he was happy that he paid it off. But this was his oldest credit card, and so for folks who don't know, the way your credit score is built is that it's built off of age of credit. And so if he would have closed this account because general information says pay it off and close it, then his credit score would have dropped and he wouldn't have qualified for his loan. And so the problem is that when you talk about building wealth, you really have to get personalized advice for your situation. There's so much misinformation that's out there. People take it and then it bites them later on and they didn't even realize it. And so the biggest thing that we see is getting people the right information at the right time. Like, it doesn't matter if you're trying to figure out how to refinance or if it's right. It's a interest rate when you're trying to navigate what is the best way to protect my credit so that I can qualify for a loan. So like the number one thing is getting the right information at the right time so you can take the right actions.
Right. And so obviously you have great knowledge of just like finances, and you have a history of it, but how do you go from having an idea about starting a company to actually starting that company and building what you've built? Like, how does that process even work?
So I would say that it's one part being hella naive, right? So it's like, yeah, I can solve this huge problem. I can do it. Like that is, and then part is just, belief in what you can do, right? So, thankfully, this isn't my first time, building an organization, building a company, even a remote company. I mean, Freeman Capital has been remote from the very beginning because I always believed in finding the best talent, not just the best talent in my zip code. And so I think that for all of us, like, we have these big, lofty dreams and visions of what we could be and what we can do, and because even for Freeman, when I first saw it, I saw this big, huge vision of what it would be, but then I had to scale it down to what's the first step that I could take right now. And so as, we built out Freeman, and for those who have big dreams as well, live in those dreams, because those dreams will motivate you and feed you when you are hungry. But then you always got to bring it down to the level of what is the next smallest step that I can take right now to get me closer to that vision. So when I first got started, the first step was, doing a market research report, figuring out, is there really a market for this idea, for, this vision? And so it was a small step. It was small in the grand scheme, but it was big for me at that time, because I paid someone, a external party, like $2,000 to do a market research study. And I had never done a market research study, but someone said you should do a market research study to make sure that your idea is real. And I remember I was like, all right, well, let me break this $2,000 into payments because I'm not going to pay it all at one time. Like, can I put $500 down now? But, taking those smaller steps, you really begin to build up confidence in yourself and your vision, and then you start to run. And so I know, being where we are now, I would lie if I were saying that this is exactly where I knew I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to help folks build wealth, but sometimes you have to be flexible on the method, but fixed on the vision.
So going off that, tell us a little bit more about Freeman Capital and exactly what you guys do. And, while Amari and I were talking about sitting down and talking to you, we also found Invest Black. So we wanted to know more about that as well.
Of course, definitely do. So Freeman Capital as a whole, it is set up to do one main thing, which is help our customers increase their net worth by providing them one-on-one personalized wealth building recommendations. And so we are a one-stop shop, being that we cover everything from you trying to get your budget and your cash flow together, to building your credit, to if you're trying to buy a house, invest through your retirement, even all the way up to things like, okay, now that you have assets, getting wills together and estates to pass it on, or even insurance. The problem that our customers had was that they were tired of using one app for every single part of their financial life. And so at Freeman Capital, we serve to be a focal point and give them personalized recommendations every single month that helps them increase and build their net worth. In terms of Invest Black, that came out of an idea of like, this was right when Buy Black and Bank Black were starting, which those are great initiatives, but wealth is built through investing in yourself and businesses in the market. And so we want to lead a campaign and help to build a community of folks who are, of course, going to buy Black and help, bank Black, but then let's build wealth and invest Black as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's all just a part of the whole vision. And exactly. I'm curious too, because obviously you started it and it came from you, but how do you go about building a team that kind of understands what you want, where you want this company to go, and kind of has that same mentality and attitude as you too?
Yeah, so the main thing that I have focused on when building out a team is we all have dreams and vision and skills, and like we want to be at a certain level in the future, right? And so when you're building a team, you want to create a vision that is so large that people can see themselves growing within it. It's like, I am here now with you, but I can see that as Freeman grows, I myself will grow and become better and become more impressive or whatever, and get more experience. So the first thing is crafting a vision that is big enough to where people can see how they can grow in it. And then something that I've had to learn, and it sometimes can be painful in the past, and even sometimes now, is like realizing where my limits are. Like, I'm not great at everything. That's just the reality, right? I might think that I can do all things, but there are some things that I should not be doing. And so, as a leader, you will stifle your team if your area, if your limit becomes their limit when they could do so much more. And that is when people leave you. And so, especially when you're building a startup, like, it really is, to me, personal development, and just my tool is entrepreneurship, because I learned where I am strong, where I am weak. People have to give me feedback. I can't be the person who sits on high and just commands things down to the people. Like, it has to be a inclusive process, because that is how we build cultures where people want to be in that type of environment, and then that is felt by our customers and our overall audience as well.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is, your biggest dream for this company?
My biggest dream would be that currently they're saying that in the next 50 years, the median net worth of Black and brown people is going to be zero. Because we're on a trajectory of income gap, wealth gaps, all of these gaps. Mm-hmm. My biggest dream is that in 50 years, there are millions of people who are living a better life. Their children are living a better life. They're getting the education and health needs that they want as a result of working with the Freeman Capital. It would make me so happy if, like, one generation was like, hey, talk to my financial planner, and you're a teacher, and you're, a janitor. It's not just for those who are like wealthy people. Like everyone is finding someone who is helping them take their family to the next level, and people are doing better as a result. That would be the best thing ever.
Right. And so, I mean, for me personally, I guess, like, finances wasn't something I really considered until I had to start paying for my own stuff as a young person. And I really do regret not having more conversations about finances with my parents and like paying attention when they're balancing the checkbook and all that stuff. And so what are like some good tips or like your top 3 tips you have for young Black people when it comes to financial literacy?
So the first thing that I would say is that start with this part is going to be fun. Like envision the type of life that you want. Like think out 10, 20 years and just dream as big as you can. And then figure out where you are now and then what that gap is, right? And so the reason why that's so important is because if I say, oh, just go read this book, it's great. You may or you may not read the book. But if you have a vision of where you want your life to be and you see that gap, that is what is going to motivate you, because then you'll start looking for, okay, how else can I use my money? How else can I better use my money? Are there ways of investing? Then like you'll start to pick up on things because your mentality has shifted. The reality is that wealth building is more about a mentality than it is behavior, right? And so when you look at just the stock market, right? We had some of our customers where the stock market crashed. They were freaking out. They wanted to pull out their money because they had hit their limit, right? Like that was what they knew. Oh, I'm losing money, pull out, because that was their perspective. But if they had a perspective of, okay, this is an opportunity to maybe buy, now they see a negative as a positive. And so when you can start with A, having your vision, and then B, figuring out those gaps, then C, you will see opportunities for what you can do better and what you can add to your life to fill those gaps, and just experiment with as little funds as possible. Like don't go out and spend all of your money on one stock. Like start super small. There's a thing called fractional shares. You can start with like $1. You can now invest in real estate without buying a house. You can do it all online. There are ways to experiment with these different asset classes, see what you like, and then take time to do that, and then fill that gap. And in 10, 15 years, you'll look back and be like, I'm living the vision that I had.
Those are good tips. And I can definitely piggyback off of Amari by like, I just thought that playing with money was something adults did. Stop. What's that? So for us people who are totally clueless, how do you say to get started with, I don't know, what books to read, who to talk to? Because when I say I am clueless, I mean I am clueless. People start explaining this to me and I'm like, huh? So where should we get started?
Yeah, so I'll be a little selfish first, and that you start with Freeman, because we built this for people who had nothing. So we and by nothing, like no education or knowledge. So we have our newsletters where we just don't talk about what happens in the market. We like break down what this means, how this can impact you, and what you can do. It's a great free place to get started. So the problem is that there are a lot of good websites, but they're, of course, going to give general information again. And so it's great. Like there's like Investopedia, there's, all of these blogs, there's 1,000, YouTube channels, but they're all going to be a general. And so for your specific interest, that's why we built our service, because then, we have our 2 plans, our unlimited advice plan where you work with a person every month and they'll educate you and help manage your money, and our do-it-yourself plan where you can then get some suggestions, get some research, and you can do it all on your own at your own pace, but it's still personalized to your exact interest, situation, and needs.
How do you keep people motivated to keep on like working on their finances? Because I feel like every year I'll start and I'll like create like a budget and I'll stick with it for like a month or 2, and then like I just don't want to look and consider what money I do or do not have. So how do you keep people engaged and continue on this path?
Yeah, that's a great question. So and just a short story, there's an app called Mint where like there's like auto budgeting. It's been out for like decades now. I got on Mint. I was so excited. I was like, it's like decades ago. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get my life together. I was feeling broke, but I was like, they're gonna help me, right? So I put all my data into Mint. I spent hours like doing all that categorization where you put like I spent this in spending, shopping, whatever. And at the end of the whole thing, it said that I had no money. I knew that before I started the whole process. Like, you didn't have to freaking tell me that, you know? And so the way that we keep folks motivated is that with our recommendations that, you know, you get every month, you know, 1 to 3 things to do, when you check that off, the majority of our users then see a increase in their net worth. And so like they're literally seeing that they are building wealth, or they're seeing how their debts are going down. So like, because there's some sort of an immediate feedback in like the first 30 days, they see like, oh, like it works now. And then we hold them accountable. So like, we check on you, we follow up with you, like we're in it together, because the reality is, if you were a millionaire and you both are going to be them in the future, right? You'll have some high net worth wealth manager. They will be like, hey, you're doing well today, you're doing bad today, let's make these changes. That is what we try and do now for everyone, so that they can get the advice that they need and have some support. Because like you said, you do it all by yourself, you forget about it. Life happens, right? But like, we hold you, we have your back, and then we check on you, and then we see like, hey, we said that we were going to do X. What happened? Let's get back on track. Or has the plan changed? And that right there keeps folks moving.
Yeah, it's like that accountability aspect that's really really nice, and also being able to see the progress and better understand it.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
I use something called Albert right now.
Yes, familiar with it.
It will text me and be like, hey, you spent X, Y, and Z amount of money at ATMs this month. You should stop. And I'll be like, oh, coming for me. But how do you want this to help the Black community? I know we've talked a lot about wealth in the Black community, but how specifically do you want this to help move and change the Black community?
Yeah, so there are 2 key metrics that we track. One is our users' net worth, which for those who might be brand new to finance, net worth is everything that is an asset versus everything that you own. So you take your assets minus what you owe. The bottom line number is called your net worth. We want to see folks' net worth grow, and then we want to help them pass on that wealth. And so this stat is kind of crazy. So when you look at one generation to the next, Black families on average pass on around $33,000 from one generation to the next, right? That's when there's no inheritance. When there is an inheritance, they pass on $38,000, about $5,000 more. Yeah, I know, right? Now let's talk about white families. When there is no inheritance, they're passing on $176,000. That's much of a head start they are getting. Now, when they have an inheritance, they pass on $276,000 in comparison to our $38,000. So what do I want? I want to help folks build their wealth and then pass it on correctly, because that's how we will make sure, because literally when we talk about the wealth gap, we're talking about the fact that we are starting a race, sometimes $200,000 behind. If you got $200,000, you would be able to feel more comfortable to start a business, or, you know, travel around the world, or, you know what, I'm not going to stick with this crappy job that I effing hate because I have to. Right. I'm going to go back to school, take this course, paper, whatever, to get the job that I want. And so the 2 things that we want is to help folks build more wealth, and then help pass it on for that next generation, so that they can do even better, because that is what we have to do for our community.
Right. And like, obviously a big element of that is like forward thinking. It's like planning for that future. And I mean, it's when you put the numbers like that, it's like, and you don't think about that on every second, but it does really put into perspective where people are, you know, realistically starting. You know, I mean, I feel like people like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like $200,000 is a lot of money to have a head start on. So it would be nice for the Black community to have access.
One more point there. So the average wealth of a Black college graduate equals the wealth of a white high school graduate. So we have been getting our degrees in great numbers. Black women are crushing it, you know what I'm saying? Per the statute are crushing it, right? But when you compare it, the wealth equals that of a high school white person. Why? Because of that wealth gap transfer. They're starting out with $200K jump, right? So we're making progress because we're getting into higher income brackets, we're getting more wealth. But like now, to think forward, like the race that we have to play is a multi-generational wealth. It's like not just about me and my family. It's like, yo, it's like my kids, my nieces, my nephews, whomever, right? And so when you play that game, it's like, all right, I want to get this set up so that at least for my family, they will be in a place to where their hard work is not equaling that of someone who just got a high school diploma.
Right. That hurts. That hurts.
Sometimes you gotta like take that pain and be like, but then you get back up. We are a people that get back up. Like you literally cannot hold us down for nothing, right? And so I'm just trying to give y'all these facts, but then like, no, we are right there to help you with each one of these steps. These reports, they just say Black wealth is going to take 200 years to equal white wealth. And then like you're left with nothing. Like to me, that pisses me off. Like give folk education and then help them get there. Don't just give them education and leave them there.
Mm-hmm. Granted, I haven't been in high school or like in a while, but I feel like these should be conversations or classes that are offered to teenagers so you have more of an opening. And feel like, you know, when I was in middle school, we were taking home ec. I feel like finances could have been a part of that conversation as well. And I mean, I don't know the state of the American educational system.
They're starting to weave in finance at a state-by-state level. I have some friends who are like helping to write some policies in New Jersey, I think North Carolina, but it's definitely state-by-state. It's not a federal thing. I'm not going to comment on our next question. I'm not going to comment on those folks. We're going to keep this thing moving.
Yeah, I know personally, I'm in Brooklyn, New York right now. And like Amari mentioned before, we were both, you know, born and raised in upstate New York, Syracuse. And we had to take an economy class our senior year. We were required to take that. And that was teaching us how to write checks and teaching us how stocks work, but it was still very confusing. I could tell personally, although my parents have done their best my dad's a business owner and to establish wealth that way and be able to pass that on, our conversations about wealth, the economy, stocks was still very, very, very limited. So in that class, I still felt behind because there were like these little white kids who were like, yeah, I know about that. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
You have kids now. What are some of the things that you talk to them about? I'm not sure how old they are, but
4.
Getting them 4.
Oh, baby.
Adorable. How do you plan on getting him or her started?
Yeah, so we've been on it for like the last 2 years now. So I mean, we just like think of the way that we think about it, right? That we teach them how to read, write, you know what I'm saying? It's just money is a part because it's part of math too. So it comes into math. But like, you know, at 3, it was like the concept of money. So he wanted this snowboard because I am an avid snowboarder, right? We didn't talk about that Oreo life, like saying we could go into
the Oreo life.
The Oreo life, you know what I'm saying? But I'm an avid snowboarder. It's like he wanted to get his own snowboarder, and as a kid, he had like $25 just from, you know, birthdays and stuff. So we go to the store, and it was like, all right. I said, count your money, and then he counted. It's 25, and then he saw this number was 34. So it was like just the concept of what I want, that number is more than what I have. And then it was like, well, how do I get more money? And so then it was like, oh, well, then you do more chores around the house. He was seeing everything he can. He was putting up his toys. But even then, like he was learning now, we first started with like the employee mindset of like trading time for hours. I mean, time for dollars. And then later on, we're going to talk about investing. So, you know, now thanks to Disney Plus, you got Schoolhouse Rock, which, you know, they're with, all of their courses, and they got things on like dollar bills and investing when they put in like little songs and the barter system. So you can start really early. There are like money books that are written for kids. A friend of mine wrote a really good book called The 4 Money Bears, which is about saving, investing, spending, and something else that I forget, sorry. But it was a good though. And like that was cool for him there, because then he saw like, oh, there are 4 ways to spend the money that I'm now getting for my snowboard, right? And like it's not an unlimited supply. Like when he was out, he was out, So we are just starting there very early on. But I mean, it would be my dream if he can buy his first business before he is 21. Like that's where I would just love for him to be there. But that's if he wants to. But I mean, for us, money is just going to be a very common thing to talk about, because when you normalize it, that's when you become good at it.
And those are just like, it's not, I think like in your head, you think it has to be this big conversation or something, but these are just like little incremental small things that you're just teaching him on a daily basis, which is awesome. I feel like my parents are dentists, and I feel like our first conversations around money involved the tooth fairy. I think that was like my first understanding of money and like how I could earn it through my teeth.
And I bet those teeth are perfect too, man. You got perfect.
I got a head start.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, but you really answered like all of our main questions today. But I mean, in case we didn't cover anything, is there some like any incremental or very significant information you want people to know about just handling their finances, or like even approaching trying to turn around their financial state?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is that to really realize that you can do it, right? So this thing feels big. It feels like audacious, but like you can do it. And something that we're going to do, and we want to help with it as well, is that we will make it even easier for our folks to get started, right? So our normal unlimited plan, it costs $65 per month. No contract. It's easy to sign up, right? But for a limited time, for your listeners, we will drop that down to $15. And so for less than the price of Netflix, you get to start working with the certified financial planner. And that's the highest designation of planning in the country. And they'll cover anything that you want on a one-to-one basis to give you the confidence to take that next step. That's what I would just love for like folks to say, hey, if you can like $15, like y'all can try that. Mm-hmm. Try it out. And then what will happen is that your perspective will explode. And you'll see that there's a whole world of opportunities that now you can take steps toward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you can get that Netflix subscription and that Amazon, you can help your financial state.
You in 20 years is going to thank you for doing it now.
Yes. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us today. I really loved this conversation. And now I feel like I need to take this energy and momentum and transfer it to my own financial life and get started.
Jump on in. No better time than right now.
Yes.
If you want to give us one last shameless plug, tell us where people can find you on socials, your website, email you, give us all the links.
Yeah, so it's freemancapital.co, not com. .co is our website. You can go there. You can chat with me or the support team. We'll be happy to get you guys going. We are active on social. Freeman Capital virtually everywhere. But on Instagram, we got our Hella Black and our Hella Professional brand, Invest Black, where you get like specialty content just for us there.
Thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure to follow us on all social media at So-Called Oreos, and you can email us at SoCalledOreos@gmail.com. Also, please fill out our listener survey. It's on all of our social media. Help us help you. You can listen to us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. And please remember to like, rate, subscribe, and leave a review. We really appreciate it when you do. Until next time, bye.